Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. In our last session, we concluded with the 40th shloka. Rupa Varnadikam Sarvam Vihaya Paramarthavit Paripurna Chidananda Swarupena Avatishthate. So, Paramarthavit, the one who has realized the self, Paramarthavit. So, for him now, Vihaya, he discards, or for him these things don't exist. Rupa Varnadika. The distinction of forms and colors, caste, creed, race, and so on, nothing of those kind exists for him. He has already discarded that. Vihaya Paramarthavit. Paripurna Chidananda. Now he revels in the Paripurna, the infinite bliss. That is called as Paripurna. Chidananda, Chid is consciousness, that is bliss of awareness. Paripurna, infinite bliss of awareness. Swarupena Avatishthate. He is fully established in that. He dwells in that. That was the shloka we did in our last session. We'll take up a new shloka for discussion today. 41st shloka. This is an important shloka. In 41st shloka, Adi Shankaracharya says, Jnatru Jnana Jneya Bhedah Pare na Atmani Vidyate Chidananda Ekarupatvat Deepyate Swayam Evahi. Swayam Evahi. Now, in this particular shloka, he speaks about this Triputi. In all our experiences, in all our knowledge, there is something called as Triputi involved. So, there is a knower, the trio, the knower and the object that is known, and the relationship between the knower and the known is called as knowledge. Similarly, there is an experiencer, then that which is experienced, the object of experience, and the relationship between the two called as experience. So in every experience, in every knowledge, this Triputi or this trio is involved. So now in this particular, this is what all our knowledge is vritti based. Vritti based means it is all thought based. All our knowledge is thought based. And therefore, Atmajnana is also knowledge, but this knowledge is different than the vritti based knowledge. In thought based knowledge, this Triputi is involved. In Atmajnana, Triputi is not involved. So, Jnatru Jnana Jneya Bheda Pare na Atmani Vidyate. In self-knowledge, this Triputi is not there. Wherever the Triputi is there, there is Dvaita, there is duality also. Duality is involved where Triputi is there. So that means I am the knower and there is some object other than me, other than I, which I am the knower of, and between the two the relationship is established by the knowledge of that object. Or I am the experiencer and I am experiencing a particular object and the relationship between the two is the experience. So that Triputi is not involved in the knowledge of the self. Though we call it as a knowledge of the self, but this self, this knowledge, unlike all other knowledge, is not thought based. It is vritti rahita jnana. One is vritti sahita jnana. All our knowledge of this world, even this text that we are studying, this is also vritti sahita jnana. This is also thought only. Aham Brahmasmi itself is a thought. ultimately we have to go beyond that thought called Aham Brahmasmi. But Aham Brahmasmi is better to get rid of Aham Dehosmi thought. Then that Aham Brahmasmi thought also has to go away. So these triputis are not there. It is not that there is something called as Atma and then I will experience that Atma, something like that, or I will know that Atma. No. Parena Atmani Vidyate, this triputi, this trio is not there. Now the thing is that when it is said that is body, mind and intellect equipment cannot know or experience the self. Actually, the word experience should not be used, or even to know also. You can't know the self through the instruments of body, mind and intellect because they are limited. Now the doubt may arise that if it cannot be known through body, mind, intellect equipment, then how am I to realize the self? With what instrument will I realize the self? If this body, mind, intellect equipment, the indriyas through which I perceive the world, if these are not equipped, these are not qualified to know the self, this cannot know it, then how am I going to realize the self? This is what the question comes. So now this Bheda is not there in the Atmani, Chidananda Eka Rupatva. Why the Bheda is not there? It is one. Ekameva Advitya, one non-dual self. There is no Bheda in that. There is nothing other than itself. Now here Chidananda Eka Rupatva. In the 36th shloka, there Ananda was qualified as the Akhanda Ananda Advayam. So Ananda was qualified with Akhanda and Advayam. Akhanda, unbroken, indivisible, unbroken bliss, and Advayam, that is non-dual. And here now Chidananda Eka Rupatva. So Chit, that is the bliss of awareness, and Eka Rupatva, one, non-dual. Now this is the state. So now having transcended the BMI, who will realize the self? With what instrument will I realize the self? So this is what happens when, that is the result of our own ignorance. Now actually self is self-illumined. It doesn't need any other instrument. So like the sun illumines everything. Sun illumines everything on this earth, and there is no need of any other light to illumine the sun, to see the sun. When it is daytime, and during the daytime we can see sun illuminating everything on this earth, it illumines everything on this earth. And to see the sun itself, we don't need any other light. It is not that, okay, with the help of the sun we can see everything, but how can we see the sun? We need some other light. No, sun is self-illumined. Similarly, this Atma is also self-illumined. It doesn't need any other light at all. Actually, if you look at it, this Atma itself, the self itself illumines all our thoughts, all our feelings and emotions and sentiments, all our perceptions through the sense organs, all our experiences in the three planes of consciousness, waking, dream and the deep sleep state. Everything is illumined by the same self. And then when they are not there, in their absence, then it is a self-illumined entity. It doesn't need any other instrument to illuminate, like the sun doesn't need anything else to illuminate. So it is self-illumined. So therefore, there need not be a fear that having transcended this body, mind, intellect, with what instrument am I going to realize the self? Am I going to know the self? Am I going to be aware of the self? Knowingness here is not like knowing any other object. Atma is not like any other object that we remove in the hand and then we see what is the size and shape and height and weight and all that thing, colors and qualities and all that thing. No, because this is the study of the self, our own self. So that cannot be studied as an object. So self-knowledge or Atma-Jnana cannot be objectified as we objectify any other knowledge of this world. So everything we study, we want to study anything, we can study it as an object, but not when it comes to the self. This cannot be studied as an object. So therefore, one need not fear that how we are going to know ourselves, because when nothing else is there, when we transcend this instrument, we are the self. We don't need any other instrument to be aware of this self. Then what remains is pure blissful awareness. That's all that remains once we manage to transcend the identity with the body, mind, intellect equipment. Now, having said that, now Adi Shankaracharya is giving us the way of slowly converting of Paroksha Jnana into Aparoksha Bodha. So we have to convert this Paroksha Jnana into Aparoksha Bodha. How are we going to do that? So there has to be some way of understanding. Now, we have already discussed many times that this waking state is the same like dream state. There is no difference between waking and the dream. But there are a couple of differences when we find. First thing is that dream is the projection of the individual mind. Waking plane of consciousness is the projection of the total mind. This is the one difference is there. Second difference is that in the dream state, nobody tells us that this is an illusion. As a dreamer, when we are having this dream experience, in the dream, nobody tells us that this is actually an illusion. But in the waking plane of consciousness, though this is also like a dream, but there are great masters who tell us that this is, my dear friend, this is a dream. And then he tries to make us understand with numerous examples from the world of phenomena. He tries to make us understand and gives us the teachings of this Upanishad to convince us that we should not take this too seriously. This is also nothing but like your dream. That advantage we have in the waking plane of consciousness. Now here, how to go about this churning? Now in this 42nd shloka, Adi Shankaracharya says, just having this knowledge is not enough. Now we have to work on that knowledge. Okay, the scriptures tell us that you are Paramatma, you are Brahman, you are the absolute truth. That is what the scriptures tell us. Okay. Now the thing is that I have known now, I am the absolute truth. That is, but I don't have that direct experience of it, direct awareness of it. Okay. So here, how to go about it? Now in the 42nd shloka, Adi Shankaracharya says, Evam Atma Aranav Dhyana Mathane Satatam Krute Uditavagatihi Jwala Sarva Ajnana Indhanam Dahe. So Evam, in this way, in which way now? Atma Aranav Dhyana Mathane Satatam Krute. Now, in this Kaivalya Upanishad also it has come, this Aranav thing. In ancient times, these fire rituals were conducted called as Yajna or Havan. And a fire which was generated to a particular process, that fire was only used for this particular Havan or Yajna, not any other fire. So how was this fire generated? There were two wooden pieces hollowed out. And then a stick is taken and both the ends, they are fixed on this, inside these two wooden pieces which is hollowed out. It is fixed like that. And then two disciples will be sitting on the opposite side with a rope tied to that and they will be pulling from both the directions. So they will be pulling it. So with the constant friction and this fixed in between, with the constant friction, fire, heat and fire is generated. And that fire was used for this Havan or this fire ritual. Now here Adi Shankara takes that example. So this Aranav, these two Aranis, the hollowed out wooden pieces, the top and the bottom one. The bottom one is the lower self or the egocentric life that we are living. And the top one is the supreme self, the pure self, which is our real nature. Now because of ignorance, we are living an egocentric life, identified with all the false things which we have taken as Atma. So identified with Anatma, we are living this life. Now living at this level, at the lower level, now the idea of this upper level, which is what our true self is, that is given. And then the in-between state is there. In-between state is that now all the millions of lives we have been thinking of ourselves to be a jiva, and the ego identified with body, mind, intellect, equipment, and suddenly you are told that you are the infinite self. Now that is a little difficult to digest. So then systematically we are told about how we can never be this body, this sense organs, this pranas, this mind and the intellect and so on. Systematically we are told with proper Shruti Pramana, Yukti Pramana, Drishtanta Pramana and Anubhav Pramana. That is the beauty of our scriptures. Our Vedic tradition is that no statement is accepted on face value. This is most important thing. No statement is ever accepted on face value. The important thing is that whatever statement is given, having seen that statement, having heard that statement, then we think it has to be proven by the Shruti Pramana. Shruti is considered to be the highest text, Upanishad. So where has it come in that Upanishad? Then having found out that, then it has to be proven by Yukti Pramana. Yukti Pramana by logical analysis, by rational analysis, by intellectual analysis, by scientific analysis, we have to prove the statement that is given in the Shruti. Having done that, we have to take the example from the world of phenomena. So that is the Drishtanta Pramana. In fact, Drishtanta Pramana and Yukti Pramana can be combined as one also. And then finally, it has to be proven by our direct subjective awareness of that. Then only that statement is accepted. Nobody in Vedic tradition, nobody is obliged to accept any statement just because it has come in the scriptures or some Mahatmaji has said it. No. Having heard that, we have to do our own analysis and then come to our own conclusion. So now this churning is going on. So one thing is that this one, the knowledge was given. First, the supreme knowledge was given. It was difficult to accept it. Then at our level, we were told that how we cannot be the body and about the relative reality of this existence. It is not an absolute reality. And so on, it goes on. And this churning is going on. Constant churning is going on. It is called as dhyana matane. Continuously, reflection and contemplation is going on between these two. So, evam atma aranav dhyana mathane satatam krute. The problem is what you know, and it takes a very long time. See, paroksha jnana we already have now. Converting paroksha jnana into aparoksha bodha takes a very long time. It depends upon the vasanas that we have accumulated over millions of lives. So, this is what it is. And the important thing is that now, why it is taking longer time? Because as much long it takes us for withdrawal from the external world, as long as we are more attracted towards the outside world, the outside world is still holding some kind of attraction to us. This withdrawal from the external world is the toughest thing. Once we succeed in withdrawing from the external world, then the other journey is very quick. So all this effort that we are putting is to withdraw from the external world. Unless we are convinced about the relative reality of the external world, and there is absolutely not an iota of joy, pleasure, or happiness in the external existence, until then, we will not put any efforts to withdraw from the world. This is the problem. So, withdrawal from the external world is the most difficult part of it. Once we succeed, once we are convinced about the unreality of that, and actually there is no joy, pleasure or happiness, why our mind keeps running into the external world to the five instruments, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, to experience only these five types of objects? That is because we have a notion that there is some joy, pleasure or happiness in the external world, and that is why we are running after it. So this withdrawal has to be there. Actually, this Maya has played a very cruel trick on us. Maya works in two ways. First is that it veils the truth. Actually, it cannot veil the truth. It veils ourselves, our perception of the truth. Because truth cannot be veiled. It is infinite. It cannot be veiled. So Maya veils our perception of the truth and then projects. So now we do not know the truth in ignorance. We are ignorant now. And then projects this unreal world, very beautiful, very attractive. And then we get attracted to that. And that which is unreal, this Mayavi thing, it has made in such an attractive way that millions of life goes before we realize that we have been taken for a royal ride. It's about time that we have to withdraw from this. We experimented with everything and nothing gave us an infinite joy, pleasure or happiness. Everything was fleeting only. After that, we are back to square one. So the thing is that this conviction has to come. This withdrawal from the external world. You see how difficult it is. Once a person passed away and the dutas, they were taking that jiva. So while they were taking the jiva, on the way the jiva saw there was one place where there was lot of rejoicing going on. Dance, music and everything going on there. And then they went further and then they end up on a very lonely path and they were going further and further away. So out of curiosity, the jiva asked these dutas, where are you taking me? So the dutas told that jiva that we are taking you to heaven. Then what was that we just passed away? Oh, that was hell. So then this jiva realized that this path to that heaven is very lonely and there is no rasa in that. So he said that I don't want to go to heaven. I would rather go where that music and dance is going on.
There is no picture and voice.
So the thing is that then the Duta said, you think again? Yes, I have thought well. I don't want to go on this lonely path. I would rather go there. So then the jiva was taken and then to that place where this thing was going on. So he entered the hall and there was a lot of music and dance and immediately he was taken from the back door. And back door he ended up in hell with all the torture chambers there. So he was aghast. He said that then what was that was going on outside there? Oh, that was just a showroom to attract people, you see. So it is so difficult to withdraw from the external world. It is not very easy. So once we succeed in withdrawing, we are convinced about the external world, about its reality. And when we succeed in withdrawing from that, then the journey becomes very quick. And why it is difficult to withdraw from the external world? Again, it is because of our own vasanas. So this ignorance, the other word for ignorance, we can call it as ego or aham bhava, jiva bhava or maya shakti or vasana. They are all synonymous. So evam atmarano dhyana mathane. So this dhyana mathane satatam kurute. Now it is not that 10 minutes of meditation dhyana we do in the morning. Here Adi Shankara uses the word satatam krute. Satatam krute means always this mathana is going on. This manthan is going on in the mind. This reflection and contemplation is continuously going on in the mind. Then when this is continuously going on between the two aranav, because that is the goal. I am at the lower level of this we are at. And then now that is the goal. The upper aranav is the goal. And in between the knowledge is given. Why we have to withdraw from this egocentric activity and then focus on that, and what are the knowledge required for that, and everything is given here. So mathane satatam krute, and this is continuously being churned out. Uditav gatihi jwala, uditav gatihi jwala. So then the fire comes out. The heat and fire is generated. This is the fire of knowledge. As the fire is generated for the fire ritual, similarly, by the churning of this lower self and the higher self, with the churning, the fire is generated. This is the fire of knowledge. Sarva ajnana indhanam dahet. So what does this fire do? It burns down all the fuel of ignorance. Sarva ajnanam indhanam dahet. So, or what is the ignorance? Ignorance is I am the body. Ignorance is this world is real. Ignorance is there is some kind of joy, pleasure or happiness in this world. This is what the ignorance is. And then you go through this. This is the ignorance. And then we get trapped into this world. So, uditava gatihi jwala sarva ajnana indhanam dahe. And then once and for all this ignorance, this burnt as fuel, in the light, in the fire of knowledge. Now, having done that, in the 43rd shloka, here Adi Shankara says, Arunena iva bodhena purva santamase rute tata avir bhavet atma swayam eva anshuman iva. Now, Arunena iva bodhena purva santamase rute. Aruna is the dawn. Dawn is a time when the sun has not yet risen, but most of the darkness is also gone. Though the sun has not risen, sun will rise any moment now. Though sun has not risen yet, but it has taken away, the dawn has taken a lot of darkness. So Arunena eva iva bodhena purva santamase rute. Santam, the earlier darkness that was removed completely. So tata avihi bhavayet atma. Similarly, the awareness of Atma also arises. Atmabodha arises. Swayam eva anshuman iva. Like after dawn, after Aruna, after dawn, the sun rises instantly, immediately the sun rises. Similarly, having done all the dhyana, after this meditation practice, constant reflection, contemplation practice and dhyana, then the mind quietens down. All the vasanas have gone. The ego has now come to the lowest level. It has almost gone dissolved, and that is the time when the Atma Bodha arises, like Anshumaniva, like the sun itself. So here Adi Shankara gives the example of dawn and the rising sun. Similarly, all the Purva Santamase, the darkness. Now what is the darkness? Darkness of Vasana and darkness of ignorance. Vasana and ignorance is the same thing. Because of ignorance only this Vasana has come up. We have experienced something and we thought that we got some kind of pleasure out of that. And therefore, what has happened is that we want to experience it again and again. And having done that, so our mind has started running on that track. Now to withdraw from that, unless an alternative and a more real thing is given, and a proper analysis is given that there is no whatsoever, no iota of joy, pleasure or happiness in any of the objects of the world, we cannot come out of that. So that is given. So all the darkness is now cleaned out, so to say, Purva Santamase Rute, destroyed, cleaned out, and then arises the Atma Bodha. Uditav eva avir bhavet Atma. Swayam eva anshuman eva. So, like the self-illumined, like the sun itself. So here again, the focus is on the Vasana. What is this ignorance? What is this Santamase? Santamase is nothing but the darkness of ignorance. Darkness of ignorance in the form of Vasana. Because from Vasana, we had discussed earlier, the desires, all the desires will come out of Vasana. And then from the Vasana, the desires come, and the desires don't allow us to sit quietly, or it makes our mind restless. Once our mind is restless, then we continuously go on into the activity to get the object of desire. When we get the object of desire, if it gives us some kind of joy, then we want to repeat it again and again and again. And that is how this Vasanas become strong, and one after the other, life after life. And instead of exhausting the existing Vasanas, then when we take a new form and come back, we create new Vasanas. Because then we find out some new object of enjoyment, and then we create new Vasanas, and it goes on and on. So until one fine day we realize that we have been taken for a royal ride. We have to get out of this. Having said that, now in the 44th shloka, here Adi Shankaracharya says, Atma tu satatam praptah api apraptavad avidyaya tat nashe praptavad bhati swakantha abharanam yatha. Now here, first itself, it has been said that Atma tu satatam praptah. So Atma is Nitya Prapta, always available to us. If Atma is always available to us, then there is no need to go anywhere to get it. People go on long pilgrimages in search of truth, or in search of self, or in search of God and all that thing. Here it is very clearly said, Atma tu satatam praptah. It is Nitya Upalabdha, always available to us, satatam praptah. Then why don't we have that? Why don't we have the awareness of that? Api apraptavat avidyaya. Though it is always available to us, but it is as if it is not available to us because of ignorance. Avidyaya, because of ignorance. So, tat nashe, with the destruction of this avidya, ignorance, praptavat bhati, as if we have got it, we have attained it. So, there was no time when we had lost it in the first place. Now, when the ignorance is destroyed, it is as if that we have got it now. So, when was it that we had lost it? It was always there. Just because we were not aware of it, that doesn't mean that it was not there. It was always there. And here, the classic example that is given, Swakantha Abharanam Yatha. This is the example. Now, if it is Satatam Prapta, and it is self-illumined, then we do not need any sadhana to realize the self, to have Atmabodha. No sadhana is required for Atmabodha, plain and simple. Oh. So if no sadhana is required for Atmabodha, then why are we struggling? Why don't we get the realization? Sadhana is not required for Atmabodha because it is Swayam Prapta, it is Nitya Prapta, it is Satatam Prapta, it is always available. Then for what the sadhana is required? Sadhana is required to get rid of that which actually obstructs our awareness of that self. Self is already there. We don't have to get it from anywhere. That is always there. We don't have to do anything for that. Then what is it? For what purpose we have to do sadhana? The sadhana has to be done not to get the Atma. Atma is always there. Okay. So to get rid of that which is obstructing our awareness of Atma, to get rid of that, we need sadhana, not for Atma. If Atma would have been available to us, or we could attain Atma through a particular sadhana, then if that sadhana gets over, that Atma will also, that experience of Atma will also go away. So it is not available by some karma, by some sadhana. If that sadhana could give us Atma Bodha, then after we stop that sadhana, that Atma Bodha will disappear. No, it is not like that. So it is Nitya Prapta. Sadhana is required to get rid of that which obstructs our awareness of our Atma, of ourself. For that purpose, this sadhana is required. So, though it is Satatam Prapta, api aprapta because of ignorance. So, the sadhana is to get rid of that ignorance, that which is veiling our perception of the truth, our awareness of the truth. So, now, api apraptavat vidyaya, tat nashe praptavat bhati. So, actually, this Satatam Prapta, this Atma, because of that self alone, all our thoughts are illumined by the self. All our feelings, sentiments and emotions are illumined by that self. All our experiences are illumined by that self. And the same self illumines all the experiences. All our three planes of consciousness, waking, dream and deep sleep, is illumined by self. In fact, our sleep experiences are also illumined by self. When we are asleep, the self is awake. So it is illuminating everything. So we cannot be apart from that. Nay, we are that alone. So the avidya is the thing that is veiling or preventing us from having a direct subjective awareness of that self. So what happens is that, for example, since our Atma, this self is illuminating everything, and yet we do not know the self. It is like this. When we are looking at the sun, and suddenly a cloud comes, and then we cannot see the sun. In our ignorance, we say that the cloud has covered the sun. We cannot see the sun. There is no sun. We say either we cannot see the sun, there is no sun, or in our ignorance, we say the cloud has covered the sun. So, the cloud cannot cover the sun. Cloud is very, very minute, very, very tiny compared to that huge sun. That massive sun, that cloud is very tiny. It cannot cover the sun. And in fact, we are seeing the cloud also in the light of the sun. So, what has cloud done? Cloud has not covered the sun. Like Maya Shakti cannot cover the Atma, cannot cover the Atma. Similarly, the cloud has not covered the sun. Cloud has covered our eyes. We cannot see the sun because of the cloud. Cloud has not covered the sun. Cloud has covered our eyes. In the very light of sun itself, we are seeing the cloud, which is obstructing our vision. So similarly, this Maya cannot veil the self. Maya has veiled our perception because of our own ignorance. So we have to use the Jnana Chakshu, not the Charma Chakshu. Our eyes is Charma Chakshu. With Charma Chakshu, we can see this relative existence. And to see the self, we have to see it with Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom. Now here, to illustrate this statement, Atma tu satatam praptaha. So it is as if apraptavat because of ignorance. Now the example is Swakantha abharanam yatha. Swakantha abharanam yatha. The example that commonly is given, couple of examples like that. Somebody is like a key is lost, and then he set the whole house searching for the key, and suddenly he is standing on one side with his, he puts his hand in the pocket and discovers there. So, and what does he say? He said that I have found the key, it is in my pocket. He uses the word I have found the key. Now you see the word found is used. I found the key. I found the key. Now, when was the key lost? Key was never lost. Only he had no memory of putting the key in his pocket. He had no memory of it. It was never lost. It was always with him. When he told everybody to search for the key in the entire house, at that time it was always in his pocket. So it was never lost. But the word he uses is that I found the key. When did he lose it to find it? Only he became aware. It was always there. Now he became aware that it is in my pocket. Similarly, this Swakantha abharanam yatha. One lady goes to attend some marriage ceremony somewhere, and she comes home and she was so tired she rests. And she didn't change the dress or anything like that. She didn't remove her necklace, nice expensive diamond necklace she was wearing. She didn't remove it. She just tired. She lied down. And then when she woke up, she put her hand there and she couldn't find the necklace. So she got scared. And her husband was very short-tempered, and then she was thinking, what will you do now? So she was shivering also with fear. She approached her husband and told her that it seems I have lost the diamond necklace somewhere in the marriage. So the husband, instead of getting annoyed with her or angry with her, he started laughing. So she was surprised why today he is laughing. Otherwise, he is always shouting and with anger and all that thing. Then go and look in the mirror. And then when she looked in the mirror, she found it is there around the neck. But because she lied down, it went behind. So she couldn't see it. She couldn't feel it with her hand. So she thought that she has lost it. So now, can she say that she has found it? When was it that she lost it? It was always there. She didn't know. It was her ignorance. So Swakantha abharanam yatha. So therefore, this Atma is always available to us. Whatever sadhana we do, we don't do it to have the awareness of the self. What we are doing is that we are doing it to get rid of that which is obstructing our awareness of the self. So getting rid of vasana. Main thing is that vasana and desires arising out of that vasana for which we keep on getting pulled into the world outside. All this world appears too attractive to us. And therefore, that is the biggest obstacle for us. And just to withdraw that, the sadhana is required. With sadhana, we cannot realize the self. if sadhana could make us realize the self, then with some other sadhana, we can lose the self also. Or if we stop doing the sadhana, then we'll lose the self or the awareness of the self, whatever it is. So one has to be very clear about it. Having said that, in the 45th shloka, how this ignorance plays havoc with our life, that is given here in the 45th shloka. Sthano purushavad bhrantya kruta brahmani jivata jivasya tatvike rupe tasmin drishte nivartate. So, sthano purushavad bhrantya. This is again the result of ignorance. Now, when we are passing by, when we are in a dark place, and now you see how the mind plays tricks. We always are deceived by our own mind. Therefore, regarding the mind, it is very clearly said, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. The mind which is under the control of our intellect is our friend. The mind which controls the intellect is the enemy. So mind can play havoc. A person, every day he walks, he does his night shift. At odd time he has to walk, say 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, or the late night, early morning he is walking. Every day he goes by that path, that road home. He has no problem. One day somebody tells him that, that the road you are taking every day night at 2:30, 3 o'clock, that is the very odd time. You know that place is haunted. There is some ghost somebody has seen. Now, until that day, for months together he was working, he had no problems at all. So he used to go very well. Now, once that worm is put into his head, that road is haunted, you better watch out. Now, today, after his duty, when he is walking back home, that time be extra alert. And now his mind will start imagining things which are not there. So he'll see a mouse running under the street light. If the street light is falling from the opposite side on the mouse, and then its shadow will appear on the other side, very long shadow will appear. And he will think that a long shadow went by. Somebody passed by. Now doesn't mean a small mouse went by. Because now our mind is imagining things. He sees some pole, some post he sees, and he imagines that some man is standing there. So like that is imagination. Sthano purushavad bhrantya. So a post is considered as a purusha or a ghost also. He will imagine a ghost also. And his mind will be so fertile, he start imagining things in that. Like children play games. They sit together and observe the clouds in the sky, and then they give some kind of name to the cloud, because the clouds will take different kind of shape. That cloud is like a chariot, this cloud is like this, and so on, or this cloud looks like an elephant. So like that, now seeing the post, now his mind is playing tricks. Now he starts imagining a human form or a ghost with all his horrific features and all that thing. So it is only the mind playing the trick and nothing else. Sthano purushavat bhrantya kruta brahmani jivata. So this Brahman, this is the absolute self, the pure self, because of ignorance appears like a jiva. Jivata, the individual self or the ego. That is what he appears like. Jivasya tatvike rupe. So jiva is of the nature of that supreme self, tatvike rupe. Once that is known, jivasya tatvike rupe tasmin drishte nivartate. So then what happens is that once this is known, that I am not this finite jiva, I am that supreme self. Once that is known, all that ignorance is destroyed. And once it is known, once that realization happens, that bhava, that bodha happens, there need not be a fear. What if I become ignorant of myself again? You see? Because once we have become ignorant, so what is the guarantee that we will not become ignorant of ourselves? Sometimes this kind of questions may arise. You see, the thing is that if we say that if you wake up from the dream, then of course we are freed from the dream horrors. But what if I go to sleep and then I have a similar kind of dream again? That is a possibility. But here, a very good example that is given is that once a milk is converted into curd, then that curd cannot be converted back to milk. That it remains curd only. So once we realize the self, there is no way that we are going into ignorance of that. That is not happening. So once that milk is converted into curd, it remains curd. That's it. We wake up from the dream, we go back to sleep, we may have some other dream again. And that may be more horrific than the previous dream. But that example will not apply here. The example that is applying here, that we can apply here is that conversion of milk into curd. Once it is converted into curd, then it cannot reconvert back into milk. That's it. So that we need not fear. So jiva se tatvike rupe twasmin drishte nivartate. So then, having had the vision, having had the awareness, Atmabodha, then that ignorance is destroyed. That Brahma Tattva, that Supreme Self was considered itself to be the jiva, the finite self. Now that is destroyed. Now, having said that, now here, already Adi Shankaracharya has given the sadhana prakriya. Satatam krute mathane, continuous. This is not a 10 minutes, 15 minutes meditation or 1 hour satsang or 15 minutes or 20 minutes of reading of the scriptures. This is satatam krute mathane. So reflection and contemplation has to go on continuously. Satatam krute. Having said that, now in the 46th shloka, Adi Shankaracharya ji says, Tattva Swarupa Anubhavat Utpannam Jnanam Anjasa Aham Mama Iti Cha Ajnanam Badate Digbhamadivat. Now, Tattva Swarupa Anubhavat. Then, having had the awareness of the self, Tattva Swarupa Anubhavat, Utpannam Jnanam Anjasa. Then that pure knowledge arises, Anjasa, instantly. It arises. So there is no gap. So once ignorance is destroyed, then there is no gap that, okay, now the ignorance is destroyed, now I'll have to wait for the Atmabodha. Now at least the ignorance is not there. No. The moment ignorance is destroyed, there the Atmabodha is. It is instant. So, Utpannam Jnanam Anjasa, that supreme knowledge arises instantly after that. So then, Aham Mama Iti Cha Ajnanam Badhate Digbhamadeva. So, all the ignorance is destroyed. Now here, what is the ignorance and how with one knowledge all the ignorance is destroyed? In the relative existence, one knowledge cannot destroy all the ignorance. Suppose I do not know knowledge about the cell phone. So I acquire the knowledge of the cell phone. But that will not destroy the knowledge of the computer. If I don't know the knowledge of the computer, it will not destroy. So now, after acquiring the knowledge of the cell phone, now all the ignorance about the cell phone is destroyed. But ignorance of the computer is there. And there are many other things also. Those ignorance are still intact. Just by knowing the knowledge of the cell phone, the other ignorance is not destroyed. But here, by knowing the self, then all the ignorance is destroyed. Basically, ignorance, we do not have to individually go because we do not have to have the knowledge of all the relative objects, which has got only relative existence. We don't have to have the knowledge of all that thing. That is not required. But the main ignorance is what? Aham Mama Iti Cha Ajnana. I, the ego, and Mama, mind. I-ness and minus. These are the major ignorance points. Forget about everything else. That we may be ignorant about so many things in the world that is irrelevant. The ignorance from the purely spiritual point of view, ignorance is I-ness and minus. Because in the pure self, there is no notion of I. Because I notion arises only when there is anything other than I. Then only the I notion arises. In the non-dual self, there is nothing other than I. So when I notion is not there, there is no question of mine also. I notion comes in the duality, and with the duality, then minus will come, because there are some things and beings other than I. Then somebody belongs to me, something belongs to me, then I-ness and minus comes. So this is what it is. Aham mama iti. This I-ness and minus. And with the I-ness and minus, again another, at a subtler level, another set of ajnanta is there, ignorance is there. That is karta bhokta bhava, doership and experiencership notion. I am the doer and I am the experiencer. That is also another ignorance. First ignorance is I and mine. And with that I and mine comes the doer and the experiencer. So these are all the effects of ignorance. So once that knowledge comes, then I and mine is destroyed. Along with that, the doer and the experiencer is also destroyed. Everything is destroyed there. So with knowing one, everything else is destroyed. And Adi Shankaracharya gives a beautiful example here about Badate Dik Brahmadivat. So now, how one knowledge can destroy all the other ignorances also. So as far as spiritual field is concerned, spiritual life is concerned, here importantly, I-ness and minus and karta, aham and mama, ahamta and mamata, these two, and then karta and bhokta. So I and mine, from there arises karta and bhokta, and these are the things that trouble us the most. If there is no I notion, there is no mineness, there is no karta, there is no bhokta, then we have absolutely no problem with this world also. In the deep sleep state, there is no I notion, there is no mind, there is no karta, there is no bhokta. We have absolutely no problem. We enjoy that very much. We wake up and we say that we enjoyed it, though we didn't know anything. Because these things are absent. Ahamta, mamata, I-ness, mineness, karta, bhokta, doer and experiencer. They are absent there. With the dream world and the waking state, all these entities come. I and mine, and then doership and experiencership notions also come. Now, badate dik brahmadivat. So, different types of knowledge, like one knowledge can give, can get rid of one ignorance. But here, Adi Shankara gives this example. Suppose we are in a new town and we do not know the directions. Which direction is what we do not know. So the local person, we can ask just one thing. Which direction the sun arises? So he'll point out in one direction. Okay, that direction the sun arises. So we know that direction is east. Having known that direction, we don't have to ask separately for the other three directions. Once that is known, we can find out where the west is, east is, south is, and north is. That we know. Having known the east, the sun arises, so that is the east, and all the other three knowledge immediately we get. We don't have to separately ask for the three knowledge. One knowledge gets rid of the ignorance of all the other three directions also. So we do not have to individually ask for each direction. So one knowledge is enough. One direction, knowledge of one direction will take care of all the other directions. So badate dik brahmadivat. Similarly, the knowledge of the self, that will get rid of this ahamta, mamata, I-ness and minus, karta, bhokta, experiencer, doership notion, as well as the experiencership notion. So these things can be taken care of. So actually, this is what all the problem is created by this ahamta and mamata. I and mine. You see, now Mahabharata happened. Mahabharata happened because of one person's mamata. When that minus comes, with minus comes the attachment. And that attachment is the cause of all our miseries. The biggest misery is the thing we are most attached to becomes the cause of our biggest misery in life. So this Dhritarashtra was attached to the throne. Dhritarashtra was attached to his son Duryodhana. So mamata was there with the throne, mamata was there with his son also. And this mamata destroyed the entire Kauravas. So this mamata, that's one mamata, one person's mamata was enough. And therefore, because of that mamata, he did injustice to his nephews, the Pandavas. If that mamata wouldn't have been there in him, this Mahabharata wouldn't have happened then. So how dangerous this is, and that causes the biggest sorrow. And Dhritarashtra had to undergo the sorrow of losing all his 100 sons. Mamata. So ahamta, mamata. Here, all other ignorance, he doesn't discuss about ignorance about anything else. Adi Shankaracharya hits the nail there. Ahamta and mamata. Get rid of that, everything is over then. The game is over there itself. And then, with that, automatically, when there is no ahamta and mamata, then the karta and bhokta will also not come. Doer and experiencer also will not be there when that ahamta and mamata itself is not there. So, this is the ignorance part which causes us a lot of trouble. So once we get rid of that, there is no problem. Now, here again, Adi Shankara is giving us what happens when the ignorance is destroyed and what are the types of ignorances that creates problem for us. Now, in this last shloka we saw, this particular shloka we saw ahamta and mamata, the ego, I and mine. When we look at our own lives, this I, the ego, and mind that belongs to me, how much trouble it causes for us. And doership notion and experiencership notion. When we do something good, we feel good about it. When we do something bad, then there is a sense of guilt in us. So that also creates a problem for us. So similarly, he points out that our sadhana begins here itself. So if we have to weaken our ego, dissolving is way too far away for us at the moment, but at least we can start weakening the ego. How much hurt we get by what others say, that means our ego is very strong. Either we get hurt or our anger blasts out. So one of the two happens, and that means in both cases our ego is very strong. So now we have to start weakening the ego by being a witness to our experiences in the external world. Whatever we go to, this is the best sadhana we can do in our day-to-day life. Whatever activities we are doing, whether we are involved in our day-to-day activities, routine activities, or work-related, office-related, or home-related, or the socializing, social-related, society and all that thing. So start being a witness. As we observe, we stand in the balcony, we observe the street. In the balcony, we are standing and we are observing the street. And we are seeing so many things happening there, people walking across, then people, vehicles moving, and so many things we observe it as a witness, and we don't get affected by that. Similarly, now this is absolutely strangers we are seeing. Then we observe closely people around us in our society, in our neighborhood, among our friends and relatives. We observe at our home itself. Then we start observing our own self, how we behave in a particular way and all that thing. This is how our Adhyatmic sadhana should go on. So, in every way, we should be alert and aware, as if somebody has focused camera on us. Like that, nowadays in the modern times, it is difficult for criminals also to commit some crime because everywhere the CCTV camera is there. Somewhere some camera will record it. And yet, of course, they do the crime, that's a different thing. Because they are forced by their vasanas. So, if we are living in the society as if CCTV camera is there. So, we are witness to others, but something else is also witnessing us. That is, we are witnessing our own self. That is how we can do our sadhana. We can learn to stand apart from ourselves, from our activities. We are watching our mind, we are watching our intellect, the thoughts flowing to the intellect, the feelings and emotions and sentiments flowing through our mind, the type of activities we are doing it. So our mind will be focused on that because we have taken the first step to be a witness to things around us. Not only we have been doing that for a long time, we have been witness to things around us, but now we are being witness to our own activity, to our own mind, to our own intellect. That is an important factor. And then, as if somebody has put a CCTV camera and we are constantly under observation. So that is how our Atma, sadhana should be. Now, we'll conclude it today here, the 46th shloka. In our next session, we'll take from 47th shloka onwards. Now, if anybody has got any questions on what we have discussed today, they can put up.
Swamiji. Swamiji.
Yes.
before we start question and answer, is it appropriate to give very brief introduction to Chidakash Dharana so that sadhana can be started from today itself? And then at the end of the Atmabodh, we'll have about half an hour session for the enlarged version of Chidakash Dharana.
Chidakash Dharana, yes. Chidakash Dharana is a practice given in Kriya Yoga, and Chidakash Dharana is a very good practice to reduce our vasanas to a great extent. Okay, so and to get to this Chidakash Dharana, first there are about 7 steps. When we complete the 7 steps, then we are qualified to do the 8th step. That is called a Chidakash Dharana. So I can briefly tell you about the first 7 steps that will take us to Chidakash Dharana, and then I can explain what Chidakash Dharana is all about. At any given time, our mind is very stormy. It is like a chatterbox, like a poultry farm. If somebody is asked to close the eyes and sit for 5 minutes, and then that 5 minutes becomes a torture, because our mind will put up so many things, like a poultry farm. So the thing is that now first we have to quieten the mind. So all the initial practice, we call it as dharana. Dharana is how to make the mind single pointed. And because the body itself gives us trouble in the meditation practice, that is the biggest thing. So we start focusing from the body level itself. For example, if we are supposed to focus our mind on the higher reality, that is the real sadhana, that is the real meditation, but immediately we can't do because the body will keep troubling us. So what we do is that when we tell something to the mind, it will do exactly opposite to that. Like children, you tell children to do something and they want to do exactly opposite to that. So if you want to get the children to do something, tell them the opposite. If you want children to do something, you tell them not to do that, and they will do that only. If you want children to not to do something, tell them to do that, they will do that only. So similarly, the mind, if you tell the mind not to focus on the body, it will focus on the body itself. So the initial dharana practice begins with focusing on the body. So that is called as deha bodha or body awareness. This is the first step in the 7 stages toward when we qualify to the Chidakash Dharana practice. So deha bodha, focusing on the body, exclusively on the body, forgetting everything else as if nothing else exists other than the body. That's all. Then the second stage is Kaya Sthairyam practice. Kaya Sthairyam practice is when we are doing this meditation practice, this techniques, the dharana practice towards the Chidakash Dharana. So the second stage is Kaya Sthairyam. In Kaya Sthairyam, what we do is that it is same Deha Bodha practice. The focus is exclusively on the body. And then what we do is that we take a sankalpa. For next few minutes, we will not move our body at all, come what may. Imagine the body to be a tree, and the part of our body below the waist is as if the root of this tree and fixed to the ground, so it cannot move. So for a few minutes, we sit in whatever position we are. And before taking the sankalpa of Kaya Sthairyam, what we do is that whatever adjustment we need to do to our posture, we do the adjustment, and then we remain there itself. Then what we do is that the next one is after Kaya Sthairyam, the third stage is focusing on the respiration. In the respiration, the breath, what happens is that the respiration is something which is neither gross nor subtle. It is in between. So when we focus on respiration, it will help us to get the mind off the body. So this is respiration. What happens is that to directly focus on the mind, it is difficult. But focusing on the respiration is easier comparatively. Body is of course gross. So to take away the mind from the body, now we focus on the respiration. So respiration to a certain extent we can control. We can, of course we can't see it, but we can feel it when you put our fingers to the nose. We can reduce the speed, increase the speed, we can slow down, we can stop also, and so on. We can in different forms, we can breathe. So the focus shifts to the respiration, breath awareness. Then from breath awareness, this is the third stage. Then fourth stage we go, which is called as Anuloma Viloma Pranashuddhi Kriya. That is, now we are not just focusing on breath. It is not just breath awareness, but focusing exclusively on the nostril itself, feeling the respiration, feeling of the coming of the air, exhalation and inhalation of the air exclusively in the nostril. So that is called as Anuloma Viloma Pranashuddhi Kriya. As if none of the other part of our body exists, only the nostrils exist. That's all. So this is a very good practice to make the mind single pointed. Then after that, again, so the thing is that having done that, then we move on to the fifth stage. Fifth stage is this what you call as focusing on the pulse, either on the pulse, so or the heartbeat or the pulse, one of the two. Initially we will find it difficult. So initially we will find it difficult to get the heartbeat, but then pulse we can initially we find it difficult to get the pulsation, sense of pulsation all over the body. So at least we can feel the pulse in our wrist. That is easy to get. If you put a thumb or the finger, index finger somewhere, we can get it. So focusing on that to the exclusion of everything else. Then the sixth practice is the mental visualization. That we take a neutral scene, whatever we may have found. Suppose on a morning walk, a neutral scene is there where we found children playing, or the animals there, or birds singing, trees, river, hills, whatever it is, and that, or on a bicycle ride we saw the scene, or on a car ride we saw some scene. So neutral scenes we see. So we focus on that. So this is mental visualization. This will also help when we do the Chidakar Dharana practice to get rid of our fears and phobias. Then what happens is that this is the sixth one, and seventh practice is that Om chanting and then Om Trataka. So we chant Om and then we focus on that Om symbol on the screen of our mind. When we practice these 7 stages, at least each stage we have to practice for a few days. And then a certain sufficient amount of single pointedness of the mind comes. Then what happens is that then we are qualified for the practice of Chidakar Dharana. Chidakar Dharana particularly, then I speak about it in other sessions separately of that. So now, these are the practice we have to start with, so to quieten the mind, because the important thing for a spiritual seeker is the quietening of the mind. The mind itself creates a lot of trouble for us. Unless the mind is quiet, we cannot meditate. And we cannot take the help of external objects. There are some people who take the help of some kind of herbs and things like that to make the mind single pointed, but then you get dependent on that. We should be able to make our mind single pointed without the crutches, external crutches. Then only we are doing a spiritual sadhana, we are a spiritual seeker, not when you are on the crutches like that. Another important factor is that many people are very curious to know, how do we know that we are progressing on the spiritual path, whether our mind has quietened or not, and how do we know that? Basically, whether we are progressing on the spiritual path or not. Of course, we have not realized the self as yet, but at least are we progressing or not? How do we know that? That is a question everybody wants to know. Now, the simple thing is that how agitated our mind was before we came on the spiritual path. So, if our mind was very much agitated before we came on the spiritual path, and now our mind has quietened to a certain degree, not completely quietened up, we are not completely at peace, but okay, I'm not too agitated as I was earlier. Okay, so some progress is there. And instead of that, if our mind has become more agitated, instead of progress, we have regressed. And if that, then if neither progress nor any the worsening of the condition is there, that means we are there where we are. It does not change anything for us. So the only real test that we are progressing on the spiritual path is how quiet our mind has become, whether our agitations have reduced or not. Of course, it will not 100% reduce, but even to a certain extent, if the mind has quietened down, those things which were agitating our mind earlier, now those things do not agitate our mind. It is a sign of progress. Earlier, even those small things also will agitate our mind. Now it doesn't matter to us. So that is a sign of progress. So similarly, one by one, if we get rid of those things that were agitating, and now even if those things are happening, it will not affect our mind. That means we are evolving. That means we are progressing. That is the only way we can know. The progress on the spiritual path is determined by how at peace our mind is. To what extent the agitations have reduced. That is the only sign of our progress on the spiritual path. No other sign is there.
We can take one question, Swamiji. Only one question today.
Yes.
If anybody has got question, please ask. Karan?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. Then Nimish Sharma.
Hariom, actually, Swamiji just answered the question, so I don't have that question anymore now.
Then Raseshwari.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Anybody? Bagai Sahab? Bagai ji? Unmute yourself. Yogi bhai, Bagai ji છે?
Yes, he is there.
Mr. Bagai, unmute yourself and ask question. Last time you said that you wanted to ask one question.
No, Mr. Bagai is not there.
No, he's not there.
He's not there.
He's there. He's using the ID as Gopal Baba.
Oh.
Acha, if Bagai Sahab, can you hear me? Niranjana, you have any question? Unmute yourself. Shankar, what about you? Okay. Yogi bhai.
Just 1 minute, I think so. I'll just follow one procedure. So I think the mic is released. 1 minute.
Yogi bhai.
Yes.
No, don't proceed. It's already 6:45.
Okay.
We must stick to the time, you know.
Right.
Now, okay. Now you do one thing. Mute everybody except Shama. Shama, please. Swamiji, Shama will sing bhajan today. One bhajan. Yeah. Shama, go ahead. Unmute yourself first. Shama, unmute yourself.
Yes, unmute. She has to unmute from a device.
विठ्ठल रखुमाई विठोबा रखुमाई शिर्डी माझे पंढरपूर साई माझे रखुमाई शिर्डी माझे पंढरपूर साई माझे रखुमाई कुंडलिक वरदा पांडुरंग हरी विठ्ठला कुंडलिक वरदा पांडुरंग हरी विठ्ठला विठ्ठल रखुमाई विठोबा रखुमाई शिर्डी माझे पंढरपूर साई माझे रखुमाई शिर्डी माझे पंढरपूर साई माझे रखुमाई कुंडलिक वरदा पांडुरंग हरी विठ्ठला कुंडलिक वरदा पांडुरंग हरी विठ्ठला विठ्ठल विठ्ठल पांडुरंग विठ्ठल विठ्ठल विठ्ठल